When I was 9 months pregnant and desperately needing my husband's support, he coldly chose to fly off to his brother's opulent destination wedding, leaving me stranded on the couch, alone with my pain and fear of going into labor. Little did he know that fate, and a shocking twist, would come back to haunt him and his entire family. My name's Grace, and I used to think I had everything figured out. I had a great job as a head of marketing, a loving husband named Mark, and a comfortable life. I was paying off our mortgage with my own income and felt incredibly proud of being financially independent. Family was a big part of our lives, too. Mark had a younger brother, Tom, and their mom, Linda, was always around. Their dad had passed away years ago, so the boys made a point to take care of her. Honestly, I found it sweet. It made me love Mark even more, seeing how devoted he was to his family. Linda seemed to like me in the beginning. We'd chat over coffee during family get-togethers, and she'd always ask about my job. Marketing, huh? She'd say with a nod, like she was impressed. Sounds important. I appreciated that. It felt nice to have her approval. I wanted to belong in Mark's family, to feel like one of them. The first few years of our marriage were filled with weekend barbecues, holiday dinners, and spontaneous game nights with the extended family. I remember one Thanksgiving with all of us packed around Linda's dining table, everyone talking over each other and laughing. "Pass the gravy, will ya?" Mark's uncle called from the far end. "You've had enough gravy, old man." Linda shot back, smiling as she handed over the dish. I looked around the table, soaking in the warm, familiar faces. This was my family now, too, or so I thought. The first red flag came during a New Year's Eve party at Linda's house. I was in the kitchen pouring myself another glass of wine when I overheard Linda talking to Mark and Tom in the living room. "Did you see what Carol's wearing?" she snickered. "That dress must have cost $5. I froze, my hand still on the wine bottle. Carol was Mark's cousin, a single mom doing her best to get by. "I'm just saying," Linda continued, her tone sharp and judgmental. "Some people need to know their limits. Don't try to run with the big dogs if you can't keep up." I felt my face flush with embarrassment for Carol. This wasn't the warm, welcoming family I thought I'd married into. I peeked around the corner and saw Linda leaning in close to her sons, all three of them giggling like teenagers. Over time, that uneasy feeling around Linda only grew stronger. What I'd first brushed off as light teasing started to feel like straight-up cruelty. And it wasn't just Carol who got targeted. At every family gathering, Linda would huddle with Mark and Tom, whispering and laughing, their eyes darting around the room, landing on someone before breaking into muffled chuckles. One Easter, I finally snapped. Linda was holding court in the living room, Mark and Tom sitting on either side of her like bodyguards. "Did you see Janet's new car?" Linda said, her voice just loud enough to hear. "Probably from one of those sketchy buy here, pay here lots. She'll be making payments till she's 80. Before I even realized what I was doing, I stood up and marched over. "Hey," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "Don't you think that's a bit much? Janet could probably hear you." The room went dead silent. Linda looked up at me, narrowing her eyes. Well, she said mockingly. "Looks like we hurt your delicate feelings, Grace." Mark and Tom exchanged awkward looks. "I just think it's mean." I pushed back, heart pounding. "Why do you always have to tear people down?" Linda's fake smile vanished. "If you don't like it," she said coldly, "you don't have to listen. Why don't you sit somewhere else?" I felt like I'd just been slapped. I turned to Mark, hoping he'd defend me, but he just stared at the floor. "Fine," I said, my voice tight. "I will." From that point on, family gatherings became miserable. I'd sit off to the side, sipping a drink while Mark stuck close to his mother like a shadow. Every now and then, he'd glance at me apologetically, but he never came to sit by my side. One night, after a particularly awful dinner, I confronted him. "Why don't you ever stand up to her?" I asked. He rubbed his face and sighed. "She's my mom, Grace. What do you expect me to do? I want you to tell her to stop being so cruel. I want you to have my back." But he never did. So I started coming up with reasons not to go, work emergencies, headaches, anything to avoid the icy glares and snide remarks. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more complicated, life threw me a curveball. I found out I was pregnant. I stared at the positive test in the bathroom, heart racing. 2 pink lines. Clear as day. "Mark," I called out, my voice trembling. "Can you come here?" He walked in, concern on his face. I held out the test wordlessly. His eyes widened as he took it from me, then pulled me into a hug. For a moment, I let myself believe that maybe things would be okay. Maybe the baby would bring us closer and heal the growing distance between us. But that's not how it went. The pregnancy was rough from the beginning. Non-stop nausea, dizziness, and the constant threat of miscarriage kept me on edge. My doctor eventually put me on bed rest, so I started working remotely. But as the weeks passed, my condition got worse. My eyesight began to decline fast. The doctors said it was a rare complication. Maybe it would get better. Maybe not. Eventually, I couldn't see my laptop screen well enough to work. With a heavy heart, I had to quit my job. I needed Mark more than ever, but he just kept slipping further away. He'd come home late, blaming work or drinks with coworkers. Most nights, I fell asleep alone, waking up to the sound of the front door closing in the early hours. Before I knew it, the day of my C-section arrived. My vision had gotten so bad that doctors insisted on the procedure. Natural birth was just too risky. I was lying on that old operating table, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. "Where's Mark?" I asked the nurse, my voice trembling. She gave me a soft, sympathetic smile. "Your husband's in the waiting room, sweetheart." He said he'd rather stay there. The surgery went smoothly, and soon, I heard the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard, my son's first cry. When they placed him on my chest, I felt this overwhelming surge of love that left me breathless. Later, in the recovery room, Mark finally showed up. His face was twisted in discomfort and annoyance. "Look, Grace," he said, "I need to say something. This whole thing, it's just not right." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" He ran his hand through his hair, visibly frustrated. "Normal women give birth without all this surgery nonsense. And men, we're not supposed to be part of this. We should meet our wives and babies at home, like it used to be." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. "Mark, I couldn't risk, save it," he cut me off. "I'm going home. This place creeps me out." The following weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and non-stop feedings. Mark was barely around, and when he was, he didn't lift a finger to help. Instead, he complained constantly. "Can't you shut him up?" He'd groan whenever the baby cried at night. "I'm trying," I'd whisper, exhausted. "He's teething, Mark. He's in pain." But Mark didn't want to hear it. He had no patience for any of it. "All you care about is the baby? What about me? What about our sex life?" I'd just stare at him, stunned. I was running on 2 hours of sleep, still healing from major surgery, and all he could think about was sex. As the weeks turned into months, his resentment only grew. One night, while I was trying to calm our fussy 6-month-old, he dropped a bombshell. "You need to go back to work," he said bluntly. I turned to him, shocked. "What?" "But the baby will get a nanny," he cut in. "We can't keep going like this, Grace. We need the money." I wanted to protest, to tell him our son needed me, that I wasn't ready, but the stubborn look in his eyes told me it wouldn't matter. So, with a heavy heart, I started job hunting. Finding a job with my impaired vision wasn't easy. Eventually, I landed a position at a small company, though the pay was far less than what I used to earn. When I told Mark, his reaction was as expected. "That's it?" he scoffed. "We're paying a nanny for this?" I felt tears sting my eyes. "I'm doing my best, Mark. It's hard with my eyesight." "Excuses," he muttered, walking away. And just like that, I found myself in a new reality, rushing to work every morning, guilt eating at me as I left my baby with the nanny, struggling to get through each day with my limited vision, then coming home to a bitter husband and a child who needed me. Time blurred into a never-ending cycle of work, childcare, and building tension at home. Before I knew it, 2 years had passed since my son was born. Despite everything, I loved him more than words could say. His little milestones brought me so much joy, but family gatherings were always tense, especially because of Linda. She'd breeze in, pretending to be the doting grandmother, but her coldness was impossible to ignore. "Come to Grandma," she'd coo, arms outstretched. But my son would cling to me, turning away from this woman he barely knew. Linda's smile would vanish, her eyes narrowing. "What have you been telling him about me?" she'd hiss. "You're turning my own grandson against me." "I'm not," I'd say tiredly. "He just doesn't know you, Linda. You don't visit." "Don't you dare blame me," she'd snap, stomping off to complain to Mark. Then, one seemingly normal Tuesday morning, my world tilted again. I stared down at the pregnancy test in my hand, my heart racing. Positive. I was pregnant again. Fear gripped me. My first pregnancy had been rough. My health had taken a hit. Could I go through it again? As I counted back the weeks, I realized I was already deep into my first trimester. The decision had been made for me. With shaking hands, I called Mark at work. "What is it?" he answered, already sounding impatient. "Mark, I'm pregnant." There was a long pause. Then, "Look, Grace, I'm busy. We'll talk later. Just don't quit your job, okay? We can't afford that." Then the line went dead. I sat there, holding the phone, feeling completely alone. Thankfully, this pregnancy was easier. My morning sickness was manageable and my vision remained stable. I kept working, determined to support my growing family. But as my belly grew, the emotional distance between Mark and me widened. He spent more and more time at his mother's house, often not coming home until late. One evening, while I was trying to get our toddler to sleep, my belly aching and heavy, Mark walked in. "Hey," I said hopefully. "Can you read him a story?" "I'm wiped out." He looked at his watch. "Can't." I told Mom I'd help her move some furniture. "Don't wait up." When the door shut behind him, a tear slid down my cheek. I looked at my son, his big eyes full of trust, and then at my belly, already so full of love for the baby inside. By my 7th month, Thanksgiving was just around the corner. That afternoon, guests began to arrive. My parents came early, and Mom immediately jumped in to help with the cooking. The house filled with laughter and chatter. Just as I was about to serve dinner, the doorbell rang. It was Tom, Mark's younger brother, and to everyone's surprise, he wasn't alone. "Everyone, this is Melissa," Tom announced, beaming. "My fiancé." For a second, the room fell silent. Then, applause and congratulations broke out. I forced a smile, trying not to notice how Mark's whole face lit up at his brother's joy. Linda showed up not long after. Her eyes went wide when she saw Melissa. Well, she said, her voice dripping with delight. "Aren't you just a sight for sore eyes?" Throughout dinner, Linda fawned over Melissa, asking her endless questions, hanging on her every word. I tried to stay focused on being a good hostess, but I couldn't help overhearing their conversation. Melissa and Linda were speaking loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "So Tom tells me you're a manager at National Bank." "That's impressive," Linda said. Melissa nodded, looking a little uneasy. "Yes, I've been there for about 5 years now." Linda smiled brightly. "You must be doing really well for yourself. Not like some people who just pop out babies and live in poverty," she added, shooting a sharp look in my direction. My cheeks flushed with embarrassment. My mom, sitting next to me, tensed up and looked like she was about to say something, but I gently placed a hand on her arm, silently asking her not to start anything. Linda wasn't done. "You know," she went on in a syrupy sweet tone, "Melissa here makes $155,000 a month. Now that's the kind of daughter-in-law I've always wanted. Smart, beautiful, successful." Tears welled up in my eyes. I thought about all the years I'd spent supporting our family, paying the mortgage, and building a career I was proud of. Suddenly, none of it seemed to matter. "I think we should continue this lovely evening somewhere more appropriate," Linda announced, standing. "Melissa, dear, why don't we all head to that new restaurant downtown?" My treat, of course. Before I could even process what was happening, Linda, Mark, Tom, and Melissa were out the door. Mark didn't so much as glance back. The rest of the guests looked awkward, the festive mood completely destroyed. One by one, they made their excuses and left until only my parents remained. They offered to help me clean up, but I told them to rest. Once I was finally alone, I collapsed onto the couch and cried, my hand resting on my swollen belly, wondering how my life had gotten to this point. It was nearly dawn when I heard the front door open. Mark stumbled in, reeking of booze and cigarette smoke. He didn't say a word as he headed straight to the bedroom. With trembling hands, I grabbed my phone and opened social media. There they were, Linda, Mark, Tom, and Melissa grinning in selfies at some upscale nightclub. The caption read, "Best Thanksgiving ever with my real family." As my due date got closer, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. The doctors had scheduled a C-section, saying it was the safest option since it had been less than 3 years since my last one. I tried to stay focused on getting ready for our new baby, but I couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong with Mark. One cold winter afternoon, I found him unpacking bags of summer clothes. "What's all this?" I asked, confused. Mark shrugged, avoiding my eyes. There was a good sale. Figured I'd update my wardrobe. It didn't make sense, but with the baby coming soon, I let it go. I had been carefully saving money in a separate account so I could take a couple months off work to heal and bond with the baby. My job had approved 2 months of unpaid leave, and I'd saved enough to cover the mortgage, bills, and a babysitter for a 3-year-old. For once, I actually felt ready. Then, 3 days before my scheduled C-section, everything exploded. I was lying on the couch when Mark burst in, Linda right behind him. "Hurry up," she snapped as Mark rushed to our bedroom. I got to my feet, waddling after them, only to find him stuffing clothes into a suitcase, the same summer clothes he had bought. "Mark," I said, panic rising in my voice, "what are you doing?" He barely looked at me. "Tom's getting married in Hawaii. We're all going. The room's fun." "What?" "But my C-section is in 3 days. Who's going to watch our son?" Mark zipped up his suitcase and finally looked at me. His eyes were ice cold. "You'll manage." You always do. Before I could respond, he brushed past me. Linda held the door open as he walked out. Then the door slammed behind them, and I stood frozen, the silence screaming around me. I ran for my phone, hands shaking, and checked our joint account. Empty. Every dollar I had saved gone. I dialed Mark's number. He picked up on the last ring. What? He snapped. The money, I said, my voice breaking. Where is it? There was a pause, then a cold laugh. We needed it for Tom's wedding gift. Don't be so greedy, Grace. Then he hung up. A sharp pain shot through my abdomen. I looked down in horror as a puddle formed at my feet. My water had broken. Panic set in. I couldn't go into labor now. The risk to my C-section scar was too high. With one hand on my belly and the other clutching my phone, I called 911. The hospital was chaos, doctors shouting, machines beeping. I woke hours later to the soft beep of monitors. My mother's tear-streaked face came into view. Grace, she whispered, gripping my hand. You're okay. The baby's okay. As the fog cleared, reality hit me. I had nearly died. My baby had nearly died. But we made it. 3 days after the emergency C-section, I felt surprisingly strong, physically and emotionally. The doctors were pleased and said I could go home. Mark hadn't called once. Not to see if I was alive. Not to ask about his newborn son. That's when I knew it was over. I called my parents and asked if I could stay with them for a while. They welcomed me and the boys with open arms. They doted on the kids while I rested and began pulling my life back together. I started looking into divorce lawyers and gathering every document I could find about our finances. Then, exactly a week after I left the hospital, my phone rang. Mark's name flashed on the screen. I ignored it twice. On the third try, I answered. Where the hell are you? He barked. Why aren't you at home? I took a deep breath. I'm at my parents', Mark, with both of our sons. I filed for divorce. There was a long silence, then a bitter laugh. Divorce? Are you serious? After everything I've done for you? Everything he'd done? I felt a rush of anger. What, like how he abandoned me right before I gave birth? Or when he emptied our savings account? Oh, get over it, he scoffed. I'll pay you back, no big deal. Actually, I don't even want to see you again. You know why? Because I'm about to be rich. Then he launched into this rant about how Tom's new wife had given him a job as her deputy at the bank. How they were starting some financial company together and how she was going to make all of them ridiculously wealthy. You never believed in me, Grace, he spat. You always shut down my ideas. You held me back. But guess what? I'm free now. And you? You're just a loser who can't recognize real potential when it's staring her in the face. To my surprise, the divorce went quickly. Mark didn't fight anything. He gave back the money he'd stolen and agreed to pay alimony. As for the house, I had years of mortgage receipts showing I was the one who made all the payments, so the judge gave it to me without question. The day I moved back in with the boys, Mark was there packing up his last few things. He sneered as I walked in baby in my arms, our toddler clinging to my hand. Enjoy this dump while you can, he said, lifting a box. I'll be living in a mansion soon, swimming in cash. You'll regret what you missed out on. As the door shut behind him, I felt like a weight had lifted off my chest. The house suddenly seemed lighter, more spacious. A year and a half went by. Life had found a new rhythm for me and the kids. I went back to work and figured out how to balance my job with being a mom. It wasn't always smooth, but we were doing well, happy, healthy, and thriving. Then one ordinary Tuesday, I got a news alert on my phone. I glanced at the headline, and my jaw dropped. Local banker exposed as fraud, family left in ruins. The article detailed a jaw-dropping scandal. Melissa, Tom's wife, had been running a huge scam. She convinced Mark, Tom, and Linda to take out enormous loans to fund a fake financial company. They even mortgaged Linda's house, pouring every dime into what turned out to be a fantasy. Melissa was never a banker. The office she'd shown them? Just a temporary rental, part of her con. Then she vanished with millions, leaving nothing but forged paperwork and crushed dreams in her wake. To make it worse, I found out they'd even taken out an extra loan to pay for Tom and Melissa's lavish Hawaiian wedding. The same wedding Mark ditched us for. As I read, a flood of emotions washed over me, shock, disbelief, and yes, I'll admit, a little bit of satisfaction. The fallout was brutal. With no way to pay off the debt, they lost everything, the house, their cars, even personal items. All repossessed. They were buried in debt. Word got around that Linda had to take a job as a cashier just to pay for groceries and a small apartment. Mark and Tom were in the same boat, broke, humiliated, their dreams completely shattered. I was so grateful I had divorced Mark when I did. My kids and I were safe, untouched by the disaster that had destroyed my ex's family. Just when I thought it was all finally behind me, my phone rang. Linda's name lit up the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Grace," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. A far cry from the confident, superior tone she used to have. We need your help." She launched into a sob story, asking if they could stay with us. "The kids need their father and grandmother," she pleaded. "You can't just leave family behind when they're in trouble." I took a long, steady breath. Flashbacks hit me, Thanksgiving humiliation, being left alone during my pregnancy, all the times they mocked me. "Family?" I said calmly. "You didn't care about family when you left me pregnant and scared. You didn't care about family when you took my savings. You certainly didn't care about family when you called me a loser." Linda tried to interrupt, but I cut her off. "I'm sorry you're going through this, Linda. But the choices you, Mark, and Tom made, that's not on me. My priority is my children. I'm not exposing them to the mess you've made. Please don't contact me again." I hung up. Then I blocked her number. As I set the phone down, I felt that same weight lift again. It was over. Really, truly over.